Welcome back to the plenary session, and good morning to anybody who joined us late on. This is the last wrapping up session, and this is going to be equally interesting as the previous ones. We are going to have more time for discussing the quality criteria and the way how climate services might encourage transformational change. So we will be hearing from the organizers of the different breakout groups and deep dive workshops and hands-on exercises about what the key lessons learned are. And we will be looking again in the Mentimeter and then check whether there's a change of your assessment of the different criteria, but that we will have also ample discussion space for discussion with the audience. And then in the second part of this session, you will have some anticipation of the next activities of the Climate Europe 2, the timing and the scope of the next Webstival that will be in March 2025, as well as the in-person festival that we will organize in autumn 2025 in Belgrade. But before we go and listen to the short reports, I would like to invite Asun, if you are here, and ask you about your first impression from the discussion, the very rich discussion that we have since the opening session. So, was it inspiring? Did it meet your expectation? Was there something that surprised you in terms of new criteria, or is it to a large extent confirmation of what we have anticipated already?
Thank you very much, Sharo. I think yesterday we had a very interesting responses to the Mentimeter that basically were a simplified version of the set of criteria that the consortium is now testing for the suitability for a standardization and so forth. But I think the most interesting part, in addition, obviously, to the interesting insights we heard from our speakers, were the additional criteria that the audience thought we should be looking into. Because what is super important in this exercise is that, yes, we need general issues that are common and that will lead to a proper comparability for evaluating climate services. But at the same time, we really need a level of granularity that gives us a specificity that needs to connect across the full value chain of climate services. And in order to get to that granularity, we need to have very deep conversations. So thank you very much for all the insights, and we will ask for more in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe the audience is really the core part of community of practice on climate services. There are many names of colleagues that have participated in the previous Webstival or in-person festival in Venice. So I believe we are going to have a very nice discussion and very informed discussion. So I am actually the first rapporteur from the session on the deep dive session that we had, but I just wanted quickly to recall also in the introductory session, right, in the opening session, we have had a very interesting insight into how stakeholders and businesses are showing increased interest in climate products and services to address the challenges. There was a underscoring that the co-development mechanism is critically important. The climate services should consider also the sector-specific needs, and this is why we organized the deep dive workshop. While providing tailored information that reflect the local climate condition and hazard, but those need also to be somehow translated into or upscaled to actionable strategies. So there was a lot of emphasis on community engagement, flexibility in standards, tailored to local conditions, systemic feedback to meet the diverse needs as well. And the interdisciplinary approaches, broader awareness among non-technical users was very important, recognized as important for holistic and effective management. So they were very interesting insight. And I would recall what impressed me most was this call for climate services to deliver a positive vision for the change. This is critically important for transformative change, reframing the opportunities away from the risk, just the risk, how we might get impacted. Uh, there was an interesting insight into create frames, positive frames for the change, and that was further explored in the climate storylines. We will hear about that in a second. Right. So I moderated the session on the bridging of the financial protection gaps. And this is a very important session. We had a number of CEOs delivering critical information for businesses on the climate risk and providing the information for the disclosure that is mandatory for certain type of businesses. That was very good. So I have summarized the discussion into key lessons learned, best practices, and the key quality criteria. So the key lessons learned was unsurprisingly, high quality local data is essential for effective climate services, including for insurance application. So there are many data gaps and availability issues that impact the validation of the indices used, for example, for the parametric insurance scheme, and then the overall acceptance of those insurance solutions. Again, we have a discussion about stakeholder engagement, co-design. That was critically important, as in other areas. What was important is that the climate services need to address specific needs of user that are integrated into existing business models, and that we have the hands-on exercise on the business model innovation. And the climate services need to take into account also some barriers to adoption of insurance or financial protection. And that includes affordability, lack of data availability, or insufficient risk awareness. So this was discussed in depth and has been recognized across the different providers and sectors that it's critically important. We had some best practice examples, and that was Climada Technologies is running a transparent platform for providing data that are quality assured and transparent, built upon transparent methodologies in order to build the trust among the users and provide really high and sound assessment and result. Again, the best practices that were identified and discussed were customized solution to local context. And this is, of course, we need to take into account the different climate hazard and opportunities in different regions and sector, which have all unique challenges and unique opportunities. So this diversity need to be taken into account. Best practice example number 3 is climate services should help to incentivize individual or collective risk reduction. So it's not only the financial service that is aimed at, but the insurance providers can really make a change, encouraging risk reduction or adaptation by offering benefits like reduced premiums or other deductibles that might help the policymakers to be motivated to take action at the individual level. And then from our session, the quality criteria that were mostly highlighted were relevance and usability, accuracy validation, scalability, and flexibility. So this is overlapping with our previous discussion, what we already had. Adaptability to different contexts, scalability to be used in other areas. Credibility and effectiveness are largely determined by the accuracy and the validation and so on. So this was a very short summary of a very rich discussion and very nice. I just remind everybody that we have recorded this discussion, and the recordings will be available for others to follow. I'm looking at the audience or somebody from the session, whether somebody would like to complement our discussion. Please feel free to raise your hand and step into this discussion. If not, then I invite Ines Martin, who was the moderator and organizer of the second deep dive workshop on building a health sheet. Ines, would you like to summarize your insights?
Yeah, thank you, Yaru. So in the building a health shield session, we had 5 speakers presenting 5 different projects that address the health impacts of climate change from different perspectives. First, we had Peter Hoffman, who presented Causing Health, which is a project that investigates the impacts of extreme heat in urban areas. He highlighted that the need to pay attention to both synergies and conflicts between adaptation and mitigation activities, and also highlighted the need for an integration of climate model outputs with other types of information like heat and demographic data. Then John Tin Juan Lachman presented Co-Care Society. This is another project focused on the intersection between health, climate, and energy in an aging society. This project also co-develops climate services for preparing for long-term demographic change, climate change, and future energy demand in an integrative way. Then the Lancet Countdown Europe was presented by Kim Van Dalen. She presented the methodology developed to calculate indicators included in the Lancet Countdown in Europe, and explain how that indicators are useful for tracking different aspects of climate health. Then Clina Charnley spoke about ID Alert. This is a project developing disease indicators to track the spread of infectious diseases linked to climate change, like malaria, dengue, tick-borne diseases. And she explained how these indicators are being calculated and delivered through a platform that is still in development. And lastly, Chuaxin Gao introduced Climb App. This is an app that delivers heat and cold risk warnings together with recommendations to reduce this risk. And he stressed the importance of the personalization of the climate service to service groups, in this case because thermal stress affects people differently. But through all the presentations, some key messages were repeated, which were: it's very important to understand the context to provide fit-for-purpose information. It's also important to co-develop climate services with stakeholders to make climate services more usable. And in fact, all 5 projects had a strong focus on crop production. And they also highlighted the challenge to get access to high-resolution health and socio-demographic data, particularly at the individual level. And this is my summary, and I will also recommend everybody to have a look to the recordings because all the projects were very interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ines, also for all your efforts in preparing this session. I'm just looking at the audience. Unless somebody would like to complement what Ines was reporting or step into the discussion and highlight some important aspects that have not been captured so far. You might simply raise your hand if you want to come in. If not, there will be enough space afterwards for the general discussion. Thank you very much, Ines. So as next, I would like to ask Letica Giraud, who will report back about the deep dive workshop on climate storytelling for municipal services. Letitia.
Thank you. Yes, hi, everyone. So I'll be summarizing the key discussion points we had yesterday. So it was a session chaired by Grit Martinez from Ecologic and Werner Krauschow from the University of Bremen on climate storytelling for municipal services. So the session aimed to question the way information and data are produced and delivered, because we know climate services are intended in the end ultimately to be used by local authorities and to benefit local communities. And the objective of climate services is not to be able to deliver only high resolution, very complex projections, data or information, but rather really to understand what is the context, what are the real needs, and what will be useful locally. And this is really the only way to make sure that climate services are, as we said, trusted, relevant, and credible for communities. So to investigate a bit this question, we had invited two really inspireful speakers to share their experience. We had on the one hand Mr. Josko Klisovic from the city of Zagreb, who's the president of the Zagreb City Assembly, gathering more than 500 citizens elected from the city, and Cristobal Rebeco, who shared a story of community-based adaptation in Santiago de Chile. So I just wanted to highlight some interesting points we can take away from the discussion we had. So first, the fact that it's really not enough to engage, and that was highlighted in the presentation by the city of Zagreb, to engage with the people and citizens locally who are already aware of climate change, are already acting to fight its impacts and to deliver climate adaptation. But the challenge is more to find a way to engage also with those people who are far away and who are most of the time the most at risk and marginalized people. So this goes, of course, through a series of citizen participatory process who we know about, but the importance is really reaching out to the right people. And we understood that that goes with going to speak with local organizations who are often the ones who know who are the citizen groups involved, who are the most affected people, who makes decisions locally. And based on that, mapping the right stakeholders, we can also know who we should speak to really understand what are the local narratives, what are the local concerns. And of course, ultimately, the objective is to deliver appropriate adaptation solutions locally. The second point is the importance of telling stories that people can understand. And what climate services are trying to say needs to be understood by the people who will ultimately use it. So we need to go beyond, and that was really highlighted in both presentations, we need to go beyond the abstract concepts like what is vulnerability, melting glacier, long-term climate policies, etc., but rather focus on daily concerns, focusing on tangible and concrete projects that can mean something for the people who live in the neighborhood, who live in the city. And as I said, ultimately the aim is to be able to foster more resilient and also more informed local responses to climate challenges. So that was the key main points, I guess. And I think if there are other people in the group here who want to add something, please feel free to step in.
Thank you very much for that. I like the point about the storytelling and personalizing the stories. So looking at the audience, if somebody would like to complement or further discuss some of the points that Leticia mentioned, please raise your hand or come in. All right. Probably everybody's waiting for a more generic overview before we enter into the specific discussion. I have been alerted about one question, and this is a question for the whole Climate Europe 2 consortium. And the question is how the young and early stage researchers can be involved in the activities of the project. I think there are multiple responses. First of all, you are very welcome to join the community. We can create spaces to voice your concerns, your suggestions as well, how to create a environment which is conducive for young researchers, young service providers to be involved, to be supported in entering into the market. So there are a number of ways how we can support them. Probably I suggest that we discuss that also in the connection to the next steps in the Climate Europe 2. But thank you very much for that question. That was really good. Now, so we have had the summaries of the deep dive workshops that really looked into and analyzed the specific needs. But earlier this morning, we had also the hands-on exercises, 4 actually. So we will be asking also the colleagues that helped to organize those hands-on exercises, what are the salient messages from their sessions, even if they were concentrated more on the practical side, how to do something. There might be interesting insight for our plenary discussion. So first, I would invite Simone Tadeo from CMCC, who moderated together with Chiara Bidolli at the session on the crafting business innovation in climate services. So Simone, what are the key messages from the hands-on exercise that you organized earlier today?
Thank you, Yaro, for the word. So they will like a really interesting parallel session with Stefano Bali, which talked about his digital platform called Separate Places. Essentially, like the takeaways were like really a lot, because we first like introduced the concept of business model canvas and how like this tool could the business innovation within the climate services. Then we went like through the different blocks that compose this kind of tool, and then we had like a really interesting interview with Stefano, which zooming like all the possible ways out like about like these 9 blocks, and what comes out as takeaways really different perspective, especially in the also like in the light of the evolving standards that we were like facing, more like in terms of quality controls and assurance. And Stefano shows us like how is important a robust process for data and process quality management in maintaining service like integrity, but also in his platform he show up like the importance of the visualization and the accessibility. So the effective visual tools that complex climate data is interpretable and accessible to all stakeholders. We also asked him like some science of climate information, so how like the platform aligns with the data and methodology with the real world challenges, and ensuring also like the relevance and applicability in respect with the flood risks. So we had also like a kind of summary of the parallel session that we have today. So we are just gonna show briefly in this kind of slide. And we also like went through like different customer and competitive channels, where Stefano also like gave us like a broader view about like the current trends and the future outcomes of the business innovation in the climate services, and also like the impact that has like this kind of services on community, also regarding the climate foresight, also climate impacts that aligns with the climate resilience goals. Was really interesting because like a lot of questions were raised. There was like so much like curiosity around this business talk, and I really advise all the people to also see the registration, because this business talk will be really important for the next future.
Thank you very much, Simone. That was really rich. I was able to follow a little bit this because I had also had the duties, and my additional couple of points to the discussion would be there's an incredibly important is to continue innovation with the business model to address new market opportunities and create the ways to better exploiting the service. And the second one, equally important, is and that we know everybody in this room who is dealing with climate services knows it's just not handing over the result of the data or something, but it's really a business co-creation dialogue, right? The service really need to explore the business innovation at the user side, that show and showcase the full potential. So thank you very much, Simone, for that. So this is activity of the Climate Europe 2 project. We will continue with that. I'll just add an invitation to all climate service providers or purveyors to get in touch with us. As a part of our activities, we are going to explore in a similar way number of climate services through the business dialogues and so on. So that might be inspiring for you, and it will be instrumental also for the research in Climate Europe. Excellent. Thank you very much. So the next hands-on exercise was about CLIMAX. CLIMAX is the mission adaptation project that is developing the platform, the framework, and the toolbox for regions to understand their climate-related risk. And we have Jan Willem Anker to tell us a little bit more about what was oh, Christopher, you are going to cover that?
I will.
Yeah, Christopher, sorry. Christopher, please tell us a little bit about your discussion in the session.
Yeah, so as part of our session, we provided the CLIMAX toolbox, which comes in the form of a digital handbook that contains a conceptual framework for how to carry out climate risk assessment and practical workflows where really get hands-on with the data and do a quantitative risk assessment, which support this conceptual framework. Our approach to that is one of standardized flexibility, as we call it, which means that we have sort of structured workflows that we implement through Jupyter notebooks and the use of mostly open source data and software. So interactivity is an important part of our process, and especially the capability of adapting these workflows to a local context. So we are not trying to provide sort of a one-size-fits-all solution, but we are trying to provide a starting point where we have very useful defaults already in our workflows that can then be customized to a local context or local circumstances by bringing in additional data, maybe higher resolution data sets or more up-to-date data sets that we, as we rely mostly on public data, do not currently have access to. And this is something that we're already putting into practice with pilot regions. We're now starting to incorporate 32 additional regions, and we also have a call running for more regions to join us that will not just receive sort of support for using these tools, but also financially. In the discussion with the participants, the questions, we mostly talked about sort of the underlying data sets and the challenges that there are when you sort of trying to provide a solution that is supposed to be very regional, but at the same time, you want everyone to be able to sort of use these tools and participate. So yeah, we showed in the example of a workflow where my colleague Martin, who is one of the workflow developers in the project, sort of showed points of the analysis where you are able to sort of inject your own data in order to customize this and show how all of these outputs are basically able to be customized and explored and how to run this. We of course briefly touched on the topic of sort of tooling, because I mean using Python is not necessarily the lowest barrier to entry to these things, but considering our target audience of sort of regions, and that we at least within our project expect that our users have people with multiple roles that are working on implementing this framework. This sort of suits us, and it provides us this flexibility that we really need for adapting these workflows. And we sort of demoed ways on how we try to lower this barrier despite these choices, showing how to run them in like a public cloud computing platform, and the documentation that we provide in order to be able to run this. And also showed that we have a community of practice that one of the purposes is to sort of provide a network for support of implementing these things.
Thank you very much, Christopher. So there are 2 points that I really would like to summarize from my point of view. I like very much your bet on building the skills and capabilities at the user side, right? So providing the climate services that is open access, but also requires a little bit technical background, characterize this dynamic nature of service development and service provision. So you're betting on through the process to building the skills and capabilities on the user side. And this is brilliant. I think this is exactly what we need. And the second point, perhaps you might got inspired by these messages about storytelling, telling the wrapping up the climate service, not just in terms of the risk that the regions are facing, but also adding some components that help them to develop a vision and develop a story, personalize the experience behind the climate risk. So there might be something interesting from this discussion for the Climax project. Thank you very much for that. And the next hands-on exercise was about how to build a climate story. And this was hosted by the Reach Out project and will be reported back by Jan Willem Anke. Sorry, Jan, for the confusion before.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. So, yeah, we just hosted a session, NGI from Norway and CAS, where I work, with the 3 of us, which is very much focused on the structure of this communication method of or communication tool of climate stories. And well, what you need for that is a good understanding of what storytelling is. So we shared some examples of the Reach Out project of climate stories we made together with the different municipalities involved in Reach Out. My own contribution was this presentation very much focused on the structure, on the narrative structure, and after that the active part started, and that was focused on creating or trying to create a climate story during this session. We got some feedback through Menti. It was interesting what people, what the majority of the people wanted the story to be about, and so we gave them the opportunity to define a challenge. There was an overwhelming interest on urban flooding, and the goal of the story turned out to be to influence policy change. Our target audience was a city council, and the main character was a family living by a river in this fictional city that we called Metropolis. And after identifying everything, my colleague James, he tried to show what a story for Metropolis could look like with all these different elements. What struck me was that was this desire apparently that for among the audience for targeting the city council. And we haven't done that so much during the Reach Out projects. We've been working with municipalities, and we were mainly focused on other parties, like say citizens or maybe developers, or sometimes people from within the municipality departments, like creating awareness from colleagues from other departments, but not so much the political level. So that was an important lesson for me. And what was also also because we focus so much on this the structure of these climate stories. So what kind of visualizations can you use? What needs to happen? Who's going to be your main character? We didn't so much focus on the way we practically made these stories together with the municipalities. And that's, I think interesting to share in the future. So how is this? How does this? What does this process look like? I can tell you that it is an iterative process where municipalities are actively involved, and where we basically create demand-driven products, right? So the municipalities have a very important say on what we eventually made. And what I can say is that if anybody has any questions left, we weren't able to answer every question. Please feel free to reach out by email or maybe in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jan. And indeed, the project is called Reach Out. So everybody feel free to reach out. What I like very much, this very practical, engaging exercise of building the story. All members of the audience contributed with what they wanted this session to focus on. I like the suggestion of telling the story of from the perspective of the river itself. It's a non-human perspective of what the climate change means, and I found it very inspiring and interesting, at least to think about. Thank you very much, Jan. And last but not least, we had the hands-on exercise on Digital Academy, which also comes from Mission Adaptation Project Agora. And Ariana is going to tell us more about what the key messages were in that hands-on exercise. Ariana?
Thank you, Yaron. Yes, we concluded the last breakout session with an exercise on the academy provided within the framework of the Agora project. Agora is an Horizon Europe coordinated by CMCC. So we had our colleague Marianna Dinolfi, who is the responsible person for the design and development of the academy. Agora combines an approach, a physical approach based on 4 pilot areas across Europe with the development of a set of digital tools, especially focused on the involvement of citizens in the adaptation processes. So this was one of those tools, and it is an academy designed to access, to enable people, also non-expert ones, to access and use climate data, risks and adaptation tools. So the academy was introduced also starting from the process in which it was designed and built, because it was a co-creation exercise during different events and conferences. At the moment, the academy is live and can be already consulted, but it's still under development. So it was an occasion from one side to show participants how it works, the different functionalities, but also to collect feedback on possible improvement and enhancement of its functionalities. The academy consists of 3 main pillars. One is the inventories, where people can find, select and search with different filters for climate data, climate risks and climate adaptation solutions. Then there is another pillar based on citizen science, so where people can actually contribute to the academy, flagging other platforms or tools which are not included in the inventories. And then also some modules for training. So it's basically an e-learning tool with 8 modules where people can start discovering climate change from its basis to more advanced topics. So it has also different levels of usage based on the people who are actually taking advantage of the tool, being them simple, standard, ordinary citizens or academics, business people with an already existing experience on these topics. And there were many suggestions in the feedback session on how to further improve this tool. But one of the main points which emerged from the discussion on the Mentimeter was the importance of training people to use those tools. And this is indeed the importance of capacity building sessions which can actually let people better understand how those tools work and make the best usage of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariana. And please count down Climate Europe to, I mean, as we are moving towards giving community more hands-on exercise experience. So there might be further opportunities in the future how to work together and across the objective of building the capacity, empowering the users, and overcoming the barriers of using climate services for practical purposes. Thank you very much for that. So this wraps up our reporting across the deep dive workshops and across the hands-on exercises. I would like to thank all the organizers, speakers, moderators, and as well the participants to the breakout discussion. I think that have created incredibly rich content and incredibly interesting outcomes and lessons learned. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to invite Asun to get back on the stage and perhaps take us through the Mentimeter that we organized in the first opening session. See whether there are differences and see whether we can discuss a little bit of the outcome more in detail. So Asun, can I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you, Yarrow. So we wanted to take you again through the exercise that we did yesterday. Maybe some of you were not here yesterday. Maybe you were and you still have some changes. Again, Climate Europe 2 is looking for concrete criteria to standardize climate services, and that takes us to the question of what defines a good climate service, or at least a good enough climate service. We are looking into a baseline that is objective, that provides criteria, and criteria for which we can actually find evidence in order to eventually quality assure, certify, and verify that a particular climate service does meet that criteria for being a good climate service. So please, if you can go to the Mentimeter, and my colleagues are putting the link one more time in the chat. We'll give you a very short 5 minutes. And there is a series of simplified questions based on the criteria that the consortium is currently studying and evaluating for their suitability to be transformed into standards and the availability of existing known methodologies, etc., or even codes or standards for each of the components of climate services, because the real challenge is to ensure that we are standardizing not only the climate information and the climate data part, but also the interaction with users, the different integration of knowledge systems, and the way in which climate services are delivered, uptake, and evaluated. So it's these 4 components. So we give you now just a few minutes. And now that you are working on it, I wonder whether my colleagues can already start showing the initial results, or we need to wait until the end, perhaps. Right. To make sure that we are finalizing on time, we will run this. So I think we are in a very similar situation as yesterday in relation to the importance of criteria that can help us fully understand the decision context of climate services, the completeness of such a description, the way in which the service may be flexible and adaptable to different regulatory regimes or to different contexts, the fitness of time scale, data, methods with the climate services purpose, that's the fit for purpose match, and criteria related to the scalability and transferability, running a little bit behind. In relation to co-production processes and the ecosystem of actors, a proper mapping remains important. So is the use of well-known co-development and co-production methods with the stakeholders. And it remains very high, the issue related to a transparent communication of the actual limitations of a climate service. Excellent. And then the next component will be criteria in relation to knowledge systems, which is very technical specifications in relation to the traceability of the sources and the transformation of data throughout the life cycle, the precision of the measurements, the systematic monitoring of processes and outputs, and the use of formats, vocabularies, and metadata standards, amongst other things, all ranking in high importance. And lastly, the issue related to delivery mode and evaluation, which we see here as well, that we are on track in exploring a deeper all these issues related to the timely delivery and accessibility, the quality of the visualizations, and also the assessment of the impact and inclusion of feedback. We want to just conclude and hand over back to you, Yaro, with some of the ideas. We have 22 responses. Okay. Any relevant criteria missing? I studied a little bit what we had yesterday, which was interesting. Some of it was mentioned by some of our speakers, like the fit for engineering, standardization, and codes and data and services that are being provided in the engineering world. Proper evaluation and communication of uncertainty, the free and open access criteria, key important for achieving equity. And I think we have more in the other page. If we can move, legitimacy within the community, identification of the institutional context. So we need to study all your suggestions, and we will take them on board as we move forward with our work. So back to you, Yaro. Thank you very much, colleagues. This is extremely interesting, and we appreciate very much your input.
Thank you very much, Asun. Now I turn to the audience because we didn't have enough time for exploring perhaps your views and your ideas, your comments on those criteria. Would somebody like to substantiate your answer in the Mentimeter pool? Please raise your hand, or if you don't want to, just post a comment in the chat. There are multiple ways how to interact and contribute to the discussion.
I see in the chat that it seems, yeah, only the people who didn't do it could do it.
Yes, yes, I noticed it by myself.
Yeah.
So I would have a question just to break the ice. And one of the suggestions from the audience was that the climate services should be based on open access and provided for free. This is, of course, sometimes difficult because there is an added value provided to assessment, analysis, customizing the climate insight for specific purposes and so on. So there is it's a service right behind, and that service also, in order to make it financially viable and sustainable, requires some cost coverage or distribution of the cost. We are addressing that in Climate Europe 2 project. There are different business model. Of course, there is also free provision of climate services by public authorities and so on. But the specialized services require some financial reward for those. We have seen an example of the Climada technologies, for example. I didn't mention that. Climada software is completely open access and open source. It's posted in accessible repositories, and everybody can download it. But the user-friendly inside and the customization of this software is a service that is paid for. So this is one way of encouraging a transparent delivery methodology and models behind those services, which we definitely need. But not all services are provided for free. So I was wondering whether you or somebody else in the audience or from the colleagues in the Climate Europe 2 project would have some comments on that, or some thoughts, or some best practice examples in addition to Climada.
I can give you my own opinion of this issue. I think we have multiple examples in the world of issues that are being claimed to be considered as a public good and not as a private good, particularly for vulnerable communities or for fundamental social or humanitarian reasons, right? And one can still do that without, let's say, poaching or destroying a market, because, as you say, one thing is the free availability of climate data, which is a public good already, certainly in Europe is. A very different thing is the added cost that requires the tailoring of the climate data to a particular decision context, et cetera, et cetera. For vulnerable communities, there must be an alternative financial mechanism that covers that cost. I think that's the only way in which this can be done. But I see our colleague Andreas have probably a better answer.
That's not a better answer, but also an opinion on that. Yeah, I think it should be having a basic data availability, public data availability for free and open access. This is something that we really should go for. But as Asun just stated, and Yaro as well, there are additional costs that might be implied to produce some products that would require of course some funding or some payment required. We would argue, I think, if we look on quality, that we can't just put the baseline that high that we say a good quality climate service has to be free and open access. Otherwise, it's not a good service. This has to be somehow balanced, and we'd have to take into account that there is a private community out there. They're producing also good products. They are trying to get into the market, and of course they will charge you for using their services in a certain way. And we just heard about the flood service example in the breakout group, which was very interesting to learn about. And of course, this is a business, and a business is per se not something bad, but as Asun said, we have to ensure that groups that can't afford paying for such a service in a way that there is a mechanism to supply them with the information they need for adapting to climate change, for instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I recall in the opening session, we have had an interesting discussion in the chat with Sally Stevens, about also the need to empower the users and equip them with the resources, whether financial or others, to participate in the co-development of climate services and conveying their views how those should be designed and so on. I was just thinking, Sally, would you have afterthought on that, and would you reflect on this discussion that we are having about provision of climate services for free?
Yes, thank you, Jaroslav. It was particularly Roberto from WSP who got me thinking. So my main focus is science communication, climate communication, particularly to policy, but also to hard-to-reach audiences. And I'm also involved in the Magica project, which is organising the European Climate Change Adaptation Conference next summer. Like many organisers of such events, we put a lot of effort into reaching out to the practitioners, the consultants, the middle people who are transferring the information about climate science research and its potential for climate services and for policy decisions and planning. And I do wonder whether we are speaking the right language. Are we using the right terms? How many people outside of our, I mean, it's a large bubble, but we're still in a bubble, use the phrase climate services? And Roberto was talking about the fact that there are no, he feels that where does WSP tell its infrastructure designers and engineers to get their climate service, their climate data from, their information about projections, how resilient their structures have to be? And I was thinking, well, I know that information is out there. So why aren't we making it available? Why aren't we describing it properly or putting it in the right place that those professionals can access? And I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts.
Thank you very much, Sally, for that. I can only say that in the Climate Europe 2 project, we have had a number of discussion about this barrier people don't understanding when we are talking about climate service. That might be similar to the context where we speak about the resilience. Nobody understands what that is, or earlier the sustainability and so on. So yes, we thank you very much for bringing that point. I would just like to highlight, you mentioned the ECA conference that will take place next year. It will be in Rimini in Italy, right? And it will be in June. Would you like to spend a few more words about that event and how it's the agenda, how it's shaping?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So it's ECA is held only every 2 years, and it's a highly valued coming together of people from all different cross sections, very well supported by policy in particular. We're very keen to get a higher percentage of practitioner climate professionals involved. And actually this morning we've just released the 5 themes for the conference next year. It'll be held on June the 16th to 18th. And it would be lovely to see everyone here there. And I'll put the link to further details in the chat.
Thank you very much for that, Sally. And speaking on behalf of the whole consortium, I believe many of the partners, but also from the community attending this Webstival will be there. And we look forward to the REACH program of ECA, which will turn to be a major gathering on climate adaptation and climate innovation in Europe and beyond. Thank you very much for that. Excellent. Is there any other comment that you or somebody from the audience that would like to share their views on what has been discussed and what has been presented or suggested through the survey? All right. Yes, I see Andreas again. Andreas, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the introductory session and underpin a little bit what was said there about positive messages that we should perhaps convey or trying to convey with respect of climate information, climate services, that this is something we really have to think about quite hard, how we can do this. It's not easy, but coming always across with catastrophic impacts and so on, which is, of course, the part of our business, if you like, that these are the impacts, but we have to find really a way to reach out to the people, that adaptation to climate change can lead to some positive impacts to them, and to a different lifestyle or whatever. And we really perhaps should think about how to reach out to the people better than just putting them under pressure, or getting them annoyed, or that they are afraid of. So I think we need a different style of communicating also our important messages out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for bringing this again to the discussion. I fully agree. It's part of how we convey certain information and insight, but also what kind of activities we support with climate services. So it's not only the negative framing of what are the risks and impacts, but also what are the opportunities, and what is the vision. I think Reach Out project and the session that it organized has put an emphasis on it. But it also brings into the play the sociological research into, and research from humanities into how we design climate services, how we convey that. And this is absolutely important. And I think we are also covering that through our consortium, but we need to put a larger emphasis on it. Thank you very much for that. Now, speaking about ECA, and you might have seen Sally has posted the news. Thank you very much for that, Sally. Posted the news about the ECA 25, and also how to sign up for the updates. Speaking about the future events, I would like to invite Francisco de Blas Reyes, who is the coordinator of the Climate Europe 2 project, to both reflect about the discussion that we had throughout the Webstival, and also anticipate a little bit about the main topic of the next Webstival that the Climate Europe 2 project will organize in March. And I'm looking to Francisco. Can I hand over to you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jaro. I hope the sound is okay.
It's better.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start by thanking the organizers of the Webstival, the program committee that you've pushed forward to make this a reality. Not just this Webstival, but the series of Webstivals that we have already organized in Climate Europe 2. And also to mention that it's a series. We have also the festival that Mirjana might talk about next. But the Webstivals are an event that Climate Europe 2 offers to many other projects than the rest of the community to get together. So it's a matter of building the community of climate services, and making sure that we can identify as many guidelines, requirements, and good practices for climate services as it's possible. And we of course in Climate Europe 2 we are entitled to go beyond what the contributors to the Webstival are providing generously as content, and try to extract those guidelines that we can use afterwards for the recommendations for the standardization of climate services. So somehow it's important for us, for Climate Europe 2, to always keep in our minds, and also to make clear to the participants and the other activities that are contributing to the Webstivals, That the goal is to develop recommendations to measure the quality understood as a multifaceted property of climate services. And this refers those climate services to objects like the climate stories that Reach Out has explained and illustrated in one of the events, and also the generic tools that Climax has also described and used during the events that they were organizing. So the point is to go one step beyond. So it's great that this is happening. It's great that we are having the discussion about the role of open access. But from the Climate Europe 2 perspective, we want to make the step of what is needed to really make sure that this has the necessary, the adequate quality to be useful. And that this is our job, and that's why we try to reach out to the community in its whole diversity to make this a reality. As Jaro said, the next Webstival will be in spring. It will be an event that we want to focus a bit more into new areas. In particular, we are very interested, we are very aware, as a large part of the community is, that the adaptation and mitigation are not separate objectives, that they are getting closer together and understood in a much closer perspective. And we want to make this the object of the next Webstival. It won't be the only event, of course, as you've seen in previous Webstivals. It's a matter of diversity and representation of what the interests of the community are. But in particular, in this coming Webstival in spring, we are already discussing with the mission on climate neutral and smart cities, which is another mission, one of the 5 missions that that Horizon Europe has established, to try to create a number of events that will put the cities at the center of the discussion as the place where mitigation and adaptation come together in a multitude, in multiple decisions that are being taken right now in cities to make them sustainable and resilient. And for this, we are already engaging with the responsible for the Mission Coordination Office, which is managed by the eCLAY Europe initiative, and to really try to bring them into a common understanding of what climate services can do to help them to reach their objectives, and also to identify what their requirements in the standardization of climate services would be. There are other requests, like, for instance, the participation of the Destination Earth initiative that is interested in, because of their increasing engagement with sectors of society that are sensitive to climate variability and change. And I would like to make a couple of more reflections. I don't know if there is time for this, Jaro.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's great that there is the points about the definition of climate services and the lack of knowledge about what climate services is outside our bubble. Even among the climate adaptation community, it's a term that is not widely used, and somehow this is a reflection of the need for the standardization of climate services. So that's well, I couldn't help remembering that in the Genesis, God creates things in the first few days, and what the first thing that God does is to give them names. So names, putting names to things is important because it brings them to existence, and it's not just by chance that in Climate Europe 2, one of the things that we are working very hard is in developing a glossary that is as encompassing and reflecting the multiple sensitivities about the definitions of the terms that we are using, so that it can help us in the standardization process. I would like also to remind the attendants that the climate services is there not just to deal with climate change, both from the mitigation, risk assessment, or adaptation perspective, but also as a tool for the management of the current climate challenges. So climate is offering a lot of challenges to current societies and the current actors in the economy and to the ecosystems. And the best climate information for the current climate is also necessary, and that's an aspect that we cannot forget and make sure that is covered. And finally, reminds everyone and thank in advance all those who contribute because Climate Europe 2 is always searching for contributions of guidelines, good practices, recommendations for standardization in the field of climate services. And that includes taking into account the role of climate services in adaptation, in mitigation, in climate-related risk assessments, or in sustainability reporting, which is penetrating so quickly in the private sector due to legislation. So this is only possible through thanks to events like the Webstivals, but also thanks to the participation in the Climate Europe 2 network, which I invite everyone who hasn't joined yet to do. And you can find the information about how to join it by visiting the Climate Europe 2 websites, where you can easily join the network and be kept updated with our events, our consultations, and about all the information that we are gathering about climate services. And that's everything from my side, Yaro. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Paco. It's always inspiring and incredibly rich of information, all your talks and contribution to this debate. Or perhaps we can also add that there's the standardization is a moving target, because as we do and process the information, there are new challenges and opportunities. And together with Paco and his team and many other organizations across Europe, we have been working on the European Climate Risk Assessment that received a lot of attention. It is a way of conveying the risk information for the European Commission. But interestingly, it also raises a number of new development potentials, and that also requires some common grounds in how we are constructing the storylines of risk assessment, for example. So there's the standardization is never-ending stories. As we move towards something that we agree on, there are new challenges that open up and require further work and further discussion and convergence among the different views. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like, Paco has already anticipated that, so we will have the Webstival in spring 2025, but later on in next year, we will have also the second in-person festival. And this is building upon the festival that we organized earlier this year in March in Venice. And this time we are going to Serbia, to Belgrade. I would like to invite Mirjana Volarev, who is the main organizer of the next in-person festival, to tell us a little bit more about how it will be structured and where it will take place, or any other information to prepare our audience for that event.
Yes, thank you very much, Yaro. First and foremost, I would like to say that this has really been brilliant experience, having a third edition of the Webstival, having a greater audience than last time. And the Webstival each time takes a different shape and form, and is truly inspiring and has many diverse topics. So as mentioned, we do not have only online events, but also on-site events. And we had a great opportunity to see that in Venice this year in March. Maybe some of you have been present there. And it's truly nice to highlight that it's a great difference to have something physical. It makes a great difference when it comes to learning and especially engagement. So we like to further enhance that and also have our festival in Belgrade next year. The dates most likely will be between 29th of September until 1st of October. And this is with great excitement that in the name of the Climate Europe team, I am inviting you all to join us in Belgrade and also share your ideas, your thoughts, and your experiences. So when it comes to the festival, I need to highlight that this is a bit of a different form than really a scientific conference, for example. We really try to add up with an innovative formats and engaging formats. We earlier, a couple of moments ago, spoke about how it is important to communicate these great challenges and what climate services actually are, and that they actually represent one of the key elements in solving climate change and the rest of the issues that come along the way. So we bring one this really engaging and powerful tool, which is art. And every year in Serbia and Belgrade, we'd have a huge manifestation that is joined by many different professionals, but also artists and scientists to bring out this different and diverse topics of great importance, but above all, give it huge discussions and great visibility. So I'm really excited to announce that a great next festival in Belgrade will be opening this art and science manifestation in Belgrade. In that way, we will have something really grand and further outreach. We'll have more audience and therefore being able to further communicate these really important issues. So yes, I'm really excited about this, and I'm looking forward to see you in Belgrade. Of course, this is just the beginning. We're still discussing the topics, the overarching topics of the festival. We invite you as our community, which is a great deal to us. We really want to have tailored events towards you and your needs and also your experiences and ideas. So please share any insights that you can. What is it that you want to see on the festival? What is it that you would imagine it? What kind of experiences? And the rest of it. So yes, we are more than happy and more than open to have your contributions and and of course, stay tuned, stay informed. We will of course gradually and continuously inform you regarding the rest of the plans and the festival. Thank you very much. And once more, this has been a really amazing event. So thanks to everyone. Over to you, Jaro.
Thank you very much, Mirjana. And speaking about the suggestions about how we can design the next Webstival or festival, in-person festival, but also, you know, reflecting about this Webstival, whether we, the form of interaction that we have suggested and put in place, whether they are satisfactory or whether you would have other ideas. I'm turning to everybody in the audience. Whoever would like to reflect about this Webstival, about the structure, about the content, about the length of the sessions, about the topics that we address, the ways of interacting, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or put a comment in the chat. All those feedbacks are incredibly valuable. And while we are waiting for the reaction from the audience, Mirjana, would it make sense to anticipate the feedback survey that we are organizing also after this Webstival?
Yes, I was just about to also add an addition to you. As always, we will send you a really short and quick feedback survey. We will really greatly admire and appreciate your feedback. So it will be really useful to have your thoughts and everything you want to mention. What would you like to see in the next, and what would you maybe dislike this time? But in any case, shortly after the Webstival, we'll be sending the feedback survey to you, and you will also have a comment section at the end. You can comment on this Webstival particularly, but also the festival too. If you don't have any ideas right now, we will also be sending the survey too. Yes, thanks.
Thank you. So I'm looking at if everybody from the audience would like to share the views on what should be done. There's one message. Yeah, thank you, Sally. Sally posted a message. It has been informative and inspirational. The experts were good. So they are all the positive remark. Thank you very much, Sally. Would somebody else have some additional suggestion and thoughts? All right. Yeah, it seems that everybody's looking forward to the launch. But before we release you, I would like to invite all those who have participated in the program committee meeting to open your camera, and this is a special thank you from the whole consortium, from on behalf of the whole audience, for all your incredible efforts put in organizing this. It requires a lot of work, like contacting the people, setting up the stage, discussing the structure and everything. So this is absolutely highly appreciated. I'm looking for Ariana. Ariana, open her Chiara. Thank you very much for that. There are many people working hard behind the scenes in preparing the Webstivals and the events of Climate Europe 2. So this is a huge thank you on our behalf, on behalf of the whole project. And of course, we would like to thank also to the audience, those that regularly participate in our events, Webstival festivals. We have seen many names that have of colleagues that have participated in the previous events, and we are really grateful for that, for your constant attention. We have seen also new names. Thank you for joining this community. I think the event offers you multiple views and interesting insight for your work or for your activity. So thank you very much for that. There's one slide of other way of interacting with Climate Europe 2 community. There is the podcast series that we are building. So if you have an idea about next edition of the podcast, please get in touch with us. If you are interested in hearing the opinion of the scientists, innovators across Europe about what constitutes a climate savings and how to make it sustainable, transparent, reliable, so you are very welcome to subscribe to that as well. You are probably already subscribed to the newsletter, but there are many other sections on our website that might be of your interest. And yeah, with that, unless Asun, you would like to step in, and thank you, Asun, for helping to moderate this this event. That was, as usual, highly appreciated and very, 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 very nice and professional.
Thank you.
Excellent. So with that, I would thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Webstival or another event next year, or either virtually or in presence. That, thank you very much, and have a nice day.